Before I start, can I just do a quick check? Because I'm going to do a bit of a review of last year's conference. So how many of you were here at last year's conference? Roughly. That's excellent. That's probably about 3/4 of the room. So that's really, really good. And hopefully some of the things I'll talk about will ring true with you. But I want to start with a question. And the question I want to ask you, for all the police officers in the room, I want you to reflect and see if you can remember why it was you wanted to be a police officer all those years ago. For some, it's more of a distant memory than others. But can you actually remember what it was you wanted to do as a police officer? And I can remember my interview. I can remember sitting in that interview room with a superintendent and an inspector asking me some really hard questions. When they said, why do you want to be a police officer? For me, it was fairly simple. And I'm guessing that it was pretty much the same for many of you in this room. I wanted to help people. I wanted to find a way of making a difference to people in the community. I wanted a job with variety. I wanted to be able to do something different every day and never know what was coming around the corner. But I think the values that drove me to wanting to do that were because I actually cared for people. I actually cared about what happened out there. I wanted to catch the bad people and look after the good people. And I'm guessing that rings true with a number of people in this room. And I'll come back to the reason why I raised that when I get to the end of my presentation. But as I say, I'm going to look back over the last 12 months, and I'm going to look back on some of the things that we talked about at conference, some of the things that have happened in policing. You'll notice that I've got a 30-minute slot. I'm not going to cover everything in policing in 30 minutes. Some things I will touch upon lightly, because I know Derek will be covering those in his speech tomorrow. But I'll cover what I think are some of the bigger issues in policing. However, what I want to do is start with something internal to the Superintendents Association. Because for those who were at the closed session last year, you'll know that I talked about the communications review that I've been conducting over the previous 18 months. And hopefully those of you who've been part of the association for a number of years will have noticed a real improvement in the way we communicate with our members. We've worked really hard at making sure that we get messages out to you as quickly as possible and messages direct to you, our members, rather than going through the branch executive. And I hope you'll think that that's been an improvement, particularly at a time when we're in a fast-moving police reform environment and things have been happening, particularly around pay and conditions, at a fairly fast pace, and we've done our best to keep you informed. Well, one of the things that I want to do today is actually do some celebrating, and I want to celebrate the formal launch of our new website. And this is something we've been working on for the last 6 months. Some of you may have seen it because it actually went live a couple of days ago. But our new website has a new look to it, a new feel to it, and hopefully you will find much more user-friendly than the previous website, and we're going to do our absolute best to keep it up to date, keep all the information that you need to do your job accessible through our website. And there's one thing in particular I want to point out, and that are the little icons that you can see on the right-hand side, the T, F, YouTube and IN. And I just want to touch on those a little minute, because we've been on a bit of a social media journey over the last year. Many of you will know from conference last year, we were on Twitter and we got a little bit of media attention and social media attention through our conference, through Twitter. But this year it's been much more active. There's been lots of conversations already about what we're going to be discussing at conference. And if you want to know more about Twitter, if you're not already on Twitter, you can read our feed and what we tweet on the right-hand side. You can click on that button to see a little bit more about what we do. Or you can, just below that, there's a little button that says follow Police Supers, and then you can follow us on Twitter and find out even more. So for those that are on Twitter, and those that perhaps are interested in Twitter but don't quite know how to use it, just click on that T button. The next button you'll see, hopefully some of you will recognise this one, it's Facebook. And I'm sure many of your families will be on Facebook. Well, we've just started our Facebook page last week. We've got 4 people like us, and one of those is me. So I'm desperate for some more likes, please. So please go back. If you're on Facebook, like us. If you've got family on Facebook, get them to like us. What you'll see through our Facebook page is some of our Twitter feed, but also some other messages that we want to put out. And the next icon that you'll see is the YouTube icon. This is another new development. We've now got our own YouTube channel. You'll have seen the notice at the very start when Graham was speaking to say that the main hall presentations from this conference, the majority of them are going to be uploaded onto YouTube. They'll be uploaded by close of play today. Sorry, by the end of today. So we'll be sending out an e-bulletin to members in the morning with links to today's presentations. So people that aren't here will get the opportunity to be able to see what's been said and what's been discussed. It will also be used for our media appearances, and any other videos we do we'll be able to put onto our YouTube channel and put the links on our website and send links out through e-bulletins. So it's another way of getting our message across to the wider public and not just the membership. And then the final icon you can see is actually the LinkedIn icon. If you're on LinkedIn, hopefully you already know that we have our own closed discussion forum. The only people that are entitled to take part in that and see anything in that is if you're already a serving member, a paying member. So what we'll do is we'll post consultation questions on there, we'll post all sorts of things from National Office, but we'd encourage you to post your own discussions on there. If there's something you want to raise with National Officers, put it onto LinkedIn and let's generate a discussion and let's hear what the members have to say. So what are the benefits of the new website and all this social media? Well, the main benefit for us is it actually takes our message out to a much wider audience. Previously, we've always relied on the traditional media through press releases to get our voice heard in the wider public. We no longer have to do that. We no longer have to wait till we get a TV or radio appearance or we get something printed in the Daily Telegraph. Actually, we can do it ourselves. We can put something on Twitter. We've got virtually 3,000 followers on Twitter. If one of those retweets that to another 3,000 followers, that's 6,000 people already have heard our message. So we've got a really fantastic method of getting our message out there direct to the public without having to use the traditional media. And I think that's really important for us, and it will be in the future. So that's our new website. Hopefully you'll get to use it and you'll get to see how user-friendly it is. If you've got any feedback on it, let us know. But I think it's one of the successes that we've had as an association in terms of moving forward around communication. And I want to come on to some other successes now. And I want to talk about some of the successes that actually never hit the media. Some of the policing successes that never hit the media. And they're the jobs that you do day in and day out. As senior operational leaders in the service, you command teams who run firearms operations, public order operations, serious crime investigations, all sorts of operational policing issues that more often than not just never hit even the local media. And I think we must recognise the success. 99.999% of policing operations are incredibly successful, and we tend to only hear about the ones that aren't. So it's really important that you recognise how successful you are, and that you also recognise with your staff about what a great job they do. But I do want to talk about some of the other successes in operational policing, because it's been a fairly busy year operationally, and I'm sure the Commissioner of the Met will accept that this has probably been a bit unique in terms of the events that have been going on in London in particular, but also wider across the country. And obviously we had the Diamond Jubilee earlier this year, and there was some fantastic coverage of that, and particularly the police officers that worked on the Diamond Jubilee. And I just think this is such an iconic photograph of, it epitomises for me the British Police Service. So the unarmed police service marching 500,000 people down the Mall in London. And I just think it's a fantastic photograph, and it demonstrates fantastically the work that our officers do when we commit to a major event such as the Jubilee. But of course, the Jubilee was pretty much superseded really with what Derek's already touched upon, and that's the London 2012 Games. The Olympics and the Paralympics have been such an amazing spectacle for this country, and it's been fantastic to see how the police officers have conducted themselves throughout that whole period. And as Derek says, you know, it's not just the 3 weeks of the Olympics, it's all the work that's gone on into planning it. And it's been right across the country as well. You know, we tend to have focused on London, but of course the torch relay, as we discussed at conference last year, touched everybody right across the United Kingdom. So it's fantastic to have seen what's happened with the 2012 Games. And it was great to see the public get into the spirit of the Olympics. I think it's been a real fantastic occasion for the public. Not only the public have got into the spirit of it, but a number of police officers have done as well. Fantastic photograph, and it shows the human side, I think, of policing. But if I go back to our conference last year, you'll recall at the Olympics presentation, we had a special guest. It was a young man called Ben Hunt Davis, and Ben had won a gold medal in the rowing in the Sydney Olympics. And he came here to talk about what it was that drove him to win that gold medal and how he had to focus his efforts to make sure that actually the gold medal was what he succeeded in. Can anybody remember what the catchphrase was that he used to, or the motto that he used to ask himself, the question he used to ask himself? Anyone remember? Will it make the boat go faster? And for those that weren't there last year, I'll just explain that briefly. Ben had this in his head that he was never going to do anything in his preparation for the Olympics if it didn't make his boat go faster. So if he got invited out for a beer or a curry, it was, will it make the boat go faster? Probably not, so he gave it up for a while. He even missed the opening ceremony of the Olympics because he didn't think it would make his boat go faster if he had a late night at the opening ceremony. And it worked for him. It worked and he won gold. Now you might be wondering why I'm raising this issue, because we don't have that many boats in the police service in this country. There's a few in the Met. But actually, I think this principle of focus and asking yourself a question can be applied to policing. But I think it's a different question we ask. The question we should ask ourselves is, will it make policing better? And if we ask ourselves that question about everything that we do, then actually it should help us achieve our aim of improving policing. And I'm going to come back to that as I go through the rest of my review. But I think the first thing we could probably apply that to is the impact of the comprehensive spending review. And the impact has been huge. It's been huge for you people, it's been huge for forces, and it's been huge for the federated ranks and police staff as well. We all know that some police staff have lost their jobs. We know that the federated ranks are feeling particularly unhappy at the moment with a number of issues around changes to structures, about changes to pay and pensions, and I'll come back to those in a moment, but there's some real concerns out there about the impact of the comprehensive spending review. And if we start off with structures, there's been a significant change in structures at a local policing level, less so at a force level. What we've seen at a local policing level is an increasing number of forces move away from the traditional BCU structure. So we've seen a lot of forces now go to what might be called a functional model, where the responsibilities of superintendents and chief superintendents have moved up to a force-wide responsibility rather than a local area responsibility. And that's really changed the role that supers and chief supers have performed. And in some places it's been quite successful, in others not so much, and we've got feedback from our members about some areas where there are some concerns about that. And I still firmly believe that the BCU structure was an effective model in most places for delivering local policing, particularly in terms of coterminosity with partners. We've also seen in terms of structures a significant increase in the amount of collaboration that's taken place. And some of this collaboration was already taking place following the failed mergers, but lots more collaboration is taking place in terms of shared services with back office work, but also in terms of operational policing, different elements of operational policing. And what we've got is different models cropping up with different leads. So some have got a deputy chief constable leading, some have got assistant chief constable, some have got chief superintendents leading. We've got areas that are where there's just two forces who work close to each other, who are geographically next to each other, working together. We've got forces who are geographically apart from each other, working together. And we've got little clusters. So we've got a real mixed picture of collaboration across the country. My concern is, at some stage in the future, we might just end up unpicking all this. We might have to, because I firmly believe that the 43 force model is not sustainable in the long term. If we look ahead to the next comprehensive spending review and the further cuts that the service is going to have to face, I genuinely don't think we can do that and continue to serve the public without risk if we don't look at the 43 force model. And I know this government isn't supportive of that discussion, and we've had the debate and we've been told there is no debate to be had. However, I think it's something that, as an association, we still have that view that the 43 force model is not the best model for policing in this country. If you were starting from scratch, you wouldn't create 43 head officers with 43 chief executives and 43 soon-to-be elected chairs. You wouldn't do that. So I think that's something that we need to be looking at in the future. And when forces are looking at all these structural change, that's the time when you need to be asking yourself this question: will it make policing better? What's the reason? What's the rationale for doing it? Is it purely financial, or is it actually going to make policing better? Another area that the comprehensive spending review sent forces looking at is, as we've already touched upon, the private sector involvement in policing. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about that because Derek's going to cover that tomorrow in his speech. And we know that the private sector has been working with the police service for many years already. But there are some boundaries being moved around privatisation. And again, I would pose the question, will it make policing better if we go down that particular route? And the final area I want to touch upon in relation to the CSR, and I've already mentioned it very briefly, is people. The CSR has had a huge impact on people in the service. And sometimes the people have been left behind and forgotten. There's been a very strong focus on structure and processes. and the people have been dealt with last, and the people are actually the most important in this. And of course, the biggest impact on people is clearly the reducing numbers. Nationally, as a service, we've already reduced by more than 5,000 police officers of all ranks. In terms of our membership, we've reduced in 18 months by almost 300 superintending posts. That's the equivalent of removing all the superintending posts from the north of England, from north east and north west regions. 300 superintending posts have already gone. And that leaves 1,369 of you doing the job. And in some places, that's clearly not enough. There are some forces that have gone down to less than double figures of superintending ranks. And we know that that's causing a real strain for people. We know that some chief officers really value the role that you do as senior operational leaders. You're the people that implement the change. You're the people that lead people, either operationally or strategically. And some chiefs clearly really value that. The question is, do they all? And what's really important is that chief officers understand what is happening to our members during this time. The resilience survey that Derek mentioned, we had the presentation last year at conference from Alan Green, as the chair of the Command Resilience Business Area. And Alan talked about the new normality of long hours, which seemed to be an accepted culture. One of the issues was that you all love your job. You said that in the survey. You said you love your job. Trouble is, you probably love it that little bit too much. And what that means is you're committed to doing whatever you can to make this job work. What worries me is what that means for you personally and for the service in terms of resilience. If there are fewer of you and you're taking on bigger jobs, bigger roles, more responsibilities, you're having to do more on call, what does that mean in terms of your personal resilience? How long can you genuinely sustain the pace at which some of you are operating? Derek's already mentioned we've got health checks here this year, and I really encourage you, if you can, to get in and get a health check, because we know that people who've been to conference in the past have identified things at those health checks that's led to them going to the doctor. Really, really important that you look after yourselves, because you can't lead others if you're not there to lead. Now, I talked about the federated ranks and some of the frustrations in the federated ranks at the moment, and it's not just the reducing numbers and the fact that they feel that it's an ever-thinning blue line out there, but of course the federated ranks have been hugely impacted upon by Windsor, the Windsor Review, which I'm not going to go into detail about. Most of that, the Windsor Review and the pensions issues, will be covered in the closed session on Wednesday afternoon for those who are particularly interested in that. But there is one particular area that I just want to touch upon in terms of Windsor 2. And it's an area that hasn't gone to the PAT, it's not been discussed at the PMB at all. It's an area that's out for consultation next month from the Home Office, and that's direct entry into the superintending ranks. And I know that there are one or two people in our membership who feel that might not be such a bad thing. But our association position is absolutely clear. It was clear when we were consulted by Tom Windsor around it, and it's absolutely still as clear now. I've yet to be convinced that this will make policing better. And my concerns are particularly around the operational risk. People in this room who've been trained as firearms commanders or public order commanders or senior investigators, you do your job day in, day out, and you make life and death decisions, whether that be spontaneous or planned. You make life and death decisions of high operational risk. But you do that not just based on the course that you went on, you do it based on the experience that you've gathered over the last 20 or 30 years. And that experience counts for a lot. Yes, we can have a TAC advisor next to us who's telling us what they think the right option might be, but you're the one that has to make that decision, and you're the one that's held to account. And if you take somebody and give them 15 months of training, you can give them all the training in the world, but you can't train for making those life and death decisions without some experience on which to hang it. So that's one of the major concerns that we've got. Another issue that's been raised is that direct entry superintending rank will improve the diversity of the police service at the senior levels. Well, anybody who knows me knows that I'm a big supporter of improving diversity, particularly in the senior ranks. The former policing minister knows, because I'm constantly nagging him about the fact that nothing's being done. This is not the answer. I am yet to be convinced that directly recruiting people into the senior ranks of the service is the answer. There are alternatives, and that's the issue for me. We haven't even considered the alternatives. Tom Windsor has proposed a fast-track scheme, it fast-tracks people to inspector. Well, why not fast-track people right through to senior officers? Why not fast-track them through to our level? They might do it in 6, 7 years, but at least they've got 6 or 7 years of operational experience behind the belt. We need a proper talent management program that spots people. You know who they are. You see PCs, you see sergeants who you know are going to be future chief officers. We need a proper talent management system that's fair, but actually picks the right people and properly supports them through a process that will make them senior officers in a short length of time. And I think that's the way forward rather than direct entry. But of course, Tom Windsor always did say that direct entry at superintendent rank should be at the discretion of chief constables. But of course, following November this year, it won't just be chief constables who might have a consideration about that, because police and crime commissioners will be on the scene by then. And it's a matter of public record that when the first consultation came out proposing police and crime commissioners as an association, we didn't agree with it. We think it's too much interest vested in one person, and that one person can't adequately represent a large group of people in that way. However, now that it's enshrined in law, I think we've got a responsibility to focus our energies on making it work and making it work for the public. So I just want to touch upon what I want to see a police and crime commissioner do. I want to see a police and crime commissioner who has a proper process in place for making sure they hear the voices of everybody in their communities, particularly the most vulnerable people and the people whose voices often aren't heard, not just the usual suspects who turn up at public meetings. I want a police and crime commissioner who will listen to the whole service, that won't just listen to chief officers, but actually recognises that senior operational leaders like yourself have a view, the federated ranks have a view, police staff have a view, and will actually genuinely listen to what other people have got to say. I want a PCC who understands what the protocol means, who understands what operational independence is for a chief officer, who understands the strategic policing requirement and that it's not just about what happens at a local level, but there's a connection from the local right through to the national. And every force has a responsibility to tackle those national issues. I also want a police and crime commissioner that recognises that crime is far beyond a policing responsibility. And that with the budget cuts that are forcing everybody, all partners, but in particular the police as well, to potentially retrench and just do your traditional reactive policing where we catch people up and lock them up and leave them for somebody else to deal with, actually we've got to move into a much more preventative way of dealing with it. And we can only do that with true partnerships, with people who have the same commitment as us to tackling the issue of crime. And if you think about the next comprehensive spending review, we all know that you can't take much more off police numbers. We'll lose 1,600 police officers. 16,000 police officers by the end of this CSR period. We can't cut many more police numbers, it just can't be done. We need to find another way of delivering policing and preventative policing, such as the early intervention, the integrated offender management, troubled families. They're the types of things that I think we need to find a way of focusing our efforts, but we need to do it with partners who are committed to doing it. So that's what I would like to see in a PCC. And I think the PCCs will also have an interest at a national level in another aspect of police reform, which is the College of Policing. So back in December last year, the Home Secretary announced that for the first time ever, the police service was going to have a professional body. None of us really understood what that meant. But Derek and I have done quite a lot of work in the last 9 months, working with the team in the Home Office that's developing the professional body, which is now going to be called the College of Policing, and trying to work out what it's going to do, what benefit it will give to the service. I think you'll hear more about that tomorrow when Emily Miles speaks tomorrow afternoon. But I think what's really important is it's in the College of Policing is being set up in the public interest. But in the public interest means it will benefit policing. I've no doubt at all that in terms of setting and enhancing standards for the profession, and that might be done through authorised professional practice, which will sit within the College of Policing. And hopefully you're all aware of authorised professional practice, and it's going to be launched formally next month, but it's currently in its trial period. And tomorrow there'll be somebody from the MPIA with a stand outside the back who'll be able to tell you a bit more about it. But it's really important that you understand the role that authorised professional practice will play in the future. It will reduce the volume of guidance massively, up to 90% in some aspects of policing. So it's going to make a huge difference. It's going to make it easier for you to access that information, and it's going to be far more consolidated. So authorised professional practice is one area that will sit within the professional body. Another area is going to be identifying what works, making sure that when people do academic studies on policing, that's fed back into the service so that we can learn from it and so that we can identify good practice and share that across the country, something we're pretty terrible at the minute. So there's some real opportunities within that. And then there are also some opportunities to involve the academic side of policing in the education and development, professional development of officers and police staff. I'm not going to go into that in too much detail, but there is an elective tomorrow afternoon that you could go and see some of the ideas of how that might be achieved. So that's the College of Policing, which I think is a real opportunity for us, the senior leaders in the service, to actually shape the college and the professional body and what it might be. There will be an independent chair appointed very soon. There will be a board, a governing board, on which we will have a seat, and that's the first time in policing terms that the Superintendents Association and the Federation and Unison will actually be sitting at the top table where decisions are made in relation to developing policing. It's a fantastic opportunity, but we've got to shape that. We can't let others do it. So I want to conclude by saying, yes, it's been a tough year, but actually within that year, there have been plenty of successes. We just sometimes forget them. We just sometimes remember all the doom and gloom and the scaremongering and everything else that goes on, and we actually forget that there's been some real successes in that year. Operationally, you cannot doubt that this is the best police service in the world. It's said regularly, we are the best police service in the world, and we mustn't ever forget that. But there are some real challenges ahead. As Derek said, many of the police reform issues will come to fruition in the next year. PCC's going to create a totally different governance system for policing. College of Policing, how will that work? How will it develop? It certainly won't be ready on day one, but we need to make sure that it actually develops into the type of body that is going to make policing better. And what's your role in all this? Well, we're all guardians. We're just guardians of our own role at the moment. Other people will come on, we'll move off. Some of you will take up chief officer roles, and I hope you'll remember and value superintendents when you do. But some of you will move on and retire. Other people will take our place. Our job is to make sure that we do our best to shape the future of this police service, to shape the service so it's in a better state than it was when we took it over, despite all the challenges we've got ahead. We've got some fantastic people in this room who deliver on a daily basis in policing. And we just need to make sure that we harness that energy and we actually shape the future for policing. And the question to ask ourselves is, will we make policing better? Well, I've got every confidence that we will. Thank you very much.